Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, we're going to be talking about universal gun background checks. Is it just registration? Senator Brophy is going to be with us on that. But first, from the Independence Institute, you know her, you love her, you listen to her on KFKA. Amy Oliver Cooke, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I wanted to talk to you about a little phone call you got back in, I think it was 2011 or so. And by the way, energy has been your bailiwick at Independence. You've been doing a great job on the facts about energy in this state. What was this phone call you got?
In March of 2011, I got a phone call from leadership at the state capitol who this particular lawmaker, Cindy Acree, had spent 18 months trying to get the expenditures of what was then called the governor's energy office. 18 months.
Well,
now, a lawmaker.
Stop there. Here in Colorado, we have the Sunshine Law,
right.
We have a Freedom of Information Act, it's called the Colorado Open Records Act. We're supposed to have this great transparent government. This is a legislator who wanted to know what was going in and out of one department of state, right?
Right.
Am I missing that?
Right, but the governor's energy office is what was at the time known as an off-budget agency. Okay, I know. Insert your joke right here. It was an off-budget agency, meaning it didn't have to, let's put it this way, the accountability and the oversight was really less than acceptable. So she called and go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting.
Keep going.
Off-budget expenditures. So in other words, government gets to spend the money, they just don't have to tell you where it goes.
The interesting thing about the governor's energy office, it was originally formed out of a settlement back in the 70s, and it was given a certain amount of money, and it was from a settlement from one of the oil companies. And this money was supposed to go to weatherization and energy efficiency.
What's
weatherization, like, making your house more energy efficient.
So people who can't afford to buy new windows and have 100-year-old windows, you can go there, they'll help you out, they'll wrap your windows for you.
And it was and they would spend a couple $1 million each year, and it was out of the settlement money, so it was called an off-budget agency. And they would say, we don't get any general fund money, except for after this lawmaker, Cindy Acree, called, and what she said is, I need help making sense of this. And she gave me a binder that was about this thick, and it was front and back, probably in 9-point font.
That's just because you're old. It was like an 18-point font.
Let me put it this way. It was it was thousands and thousands and thousands of just line items of individual expenditures. They didn't even give it to her in electronic format.
It took her 18 months
to
get from a transparent government a book of expenditures that she could not even decipher.
She couldn't decipher. Yes, that's what she told me. She'd been trying to get this information, and when she got it, she realized it was in a format that she just couldn't make much sense of it. You have to go through every single individual line item. So so she called me, and I took a look at it, and we went through it. And then I got an intern, fortunately, a bright intern who,
unlike our usual interns.
Yeah, this kid actually I say bright because he's from Greeley, my hometown. So there, just giving a hometown plug. Anyway, scanned. We took of these. I think the expenditures went back to 2006, maybe. We took from 2008 through November of 2010, scanned every page, he then wrote a program that read every line, and then we were able to categorize it. And it was more than 18,000 line items of expenditures. Now, this was in 2011.
This is great. In the digital age, 2011, instead of handing you a little flash drive with the information, the only thing a legislator could get out of this department was good old-fashioned paper. They had to kill some trees.
Right.
And so at the Energy Policy Center at Independence, you had to have somebody create a program to actually lift the information off of the paper, put it into a computer. So we had to go from a computer to paper to a scanner to get to a computer.
Right, and this took a long time. I mean, it took him, it was the entire summer for the project, and the paper, he put together a report, and it was, again, this is fall of 2011, and it said, the title of it was Governor's Energy Office Needs a Dose of Sunshine. And what we found is that in that time frame, that the time frame that we examined, so from 2008 to November 2010, that they had spent about $120+ million. Now, this is an agency that typically had been spending just a few $1,000,000 per year. They had also claimed they had never taken any general funds. We found that there was $15 million from the general fund put into this agency. So the idea that they were off budget was not quite accurate. And then
this is great stuff. I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but you just keep glossing over this like it's no big deal. But
because I've been doing it.
You've got an agency that has been taking money out of the general fund.
Well, they've been allocated
allocations have been going into from the general fund. Yet there wasn't any transparency.
No.
Instead of spending $1, $2, $3 million, they spent
They're $120 million. Now, remember, this was stimulus. At this point, we've had stimulus money. And so this is an agency that had...
You can wrap a lot of windows in insulation for $120 million.
Well, what is interesting is some of the stuff that we found. For instance, they were spending, and I compared the governor or the Secretary of State's office, which has 2 cell phones, and they were spending $600 a year on cell phones. The governor's energy office, now you can, I guess, argue which one you think is more important, but the governor's energy office had spent something like $50,000 on cell phones. You had them spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in travel. But really, one of the things, the most disturbing thing that we found was that there was $9 million that the governor's energy office, there was the description, either it didn't have a description of how they spent it, what it was going to, or it was indecipherable. It didn't make any sense. It might be a series of characters.
$9 million.
$9 million that we couldn't, and we kept asking them what it was, and can you help us? Please explain. Can you tell us what this is? And they never gave us any answers. Ever. I mean, we just couldn't get any clarity on it.
Only $9 million. It's only, what, 4 times what they usually spend in an entire year in an office, but they couldn't tell you.
They couldn't explain it. They could not explain it, and then
they couldn't explain it because they didn't want to explain it, or they
weren't answering. They weren't answering our requests, and they weren't answering Representative Acrie's requests. And at the time, Representative Acrie was on the Legislative Audit Committee. So one of our recommendations was one that this it needs a full-blown audit. It's got to have a full-blown audit because nobody really knows how much money is being spent there, and frankly, you can't get answers. What I thought was funny is they would charge me 75 cents for a CORA and make sure that I had come in.
A request
for Colorado Open Records Act request. But I'm laughing. You go, you can't tell me we're $9 million, but you got to, I'm getting a receipt for 75 cents. So anyway, I got a kick out of that. But 2 things that we recommended was the first one was it needs a full-blown audit. And that was in the fall of 2011. The second one is that it needs to, if they're going to keep it, it can't be an off-budget agency. So the audit, Representative Acrie at the time was sitting on the state Legislative Audit Committee. She requested an audit. They got the audit, and the results were released in December, and it really made public, I think, at the end of January.
All right, and this was pretty amazing. Now, let's scold the good intern who did this work with you. And that was, I'm trying to remember.
His name is Kyle Hewa, full ride scholarship to Stanford, great kid from Greeley.
Brought up the IQ of the place. It was good to have him there. But you guys came up with $9 million. Wait. $9 million you couldn't identify. You made some mistakes in this report, and I think it's fair that you now make an official correction and apologize.
We have to own up.
You have to
own up to it. The state auditor's office said that the governor's energy office. Now, I will say they went back a few more years than we did. Okay. They found that the now called the Colorado Energy Office, it has been reorganized based on our report. They found that they did not spend effectively $252 million. And they don't really, I mean, and the agency
spend effectively, or they don't know.
Well, they can't really prove that they were cost effective in how they spent money, and they really they hammered them for sloppy accounting and sloppy management practices.
Again, we said $9 million.
I said $9 million that I couldn't.
And the state auditor who spent months at this came up with a different number, not $9 million, but $252
million. That they're just, and again, criticizing their accounting practices and criticizing their management. When we found the $9 million, then the former director, Tom Plant, who is now up at Colorado State University serving as a policy advisor under former Governor Bill Ritter, he said, well, the money's been spent. We know it's been spent, and there's an explanation. He didn't say this part, but you can finish that quote and say, but he just couldn't provide it. He just didn't provide it. We asked repeatedly.
Story doesn't end. First of all, I'm glad that at least got some ink in January.
Yeah, it did.
That the auditor looked at this and said, this is crazy. There were some changes made, but there's still a few questions. Tell me about that.
Yeah, there are, and I should say that, too, I think it was the state Senate, and the legislature in general said, you know what, we're going to cut your funding by or by 25% until you can kind of get your act together. So I give them credit for that. But there were Republicans on the state audit committee, and it's a committee that's supposed to be, you know, it's made up of both parties and from both the House and the Senate. And they asked for an additional 8 hours to look into, further dig into what has happened to this $252 million. Remember, this is taxpayer money.
It's a quarter of $1 billion.
Much of it, yeah, a quarter of $1 billion.
And they want how many more hours?
They want an additional, I think it was 8 hours.
The audit committee, the auditors want an extra day.
Well, the Legislative Audit Committee wants to, or Republicans on the Legislative Audit Committee want to pay the state auditor for another 8 hours to look a little further into this. And the Democrats on the committee said no.
8 hours.
That's what I...
8 hours, 1 day. Speculate with me. We got a minute left. Speculate. Why in the world, after finding a $250 million worth of slop in the government books, wouldn't the audit committee authorize just another day to try to find out where that money really went?
Because nobody wants their green agenda. Those who are in power don't want their green agenda exposed for being inefficient. Or, I mean, that's what I think. They don't want to see where the money was spent.
Is this issue dead and gone now?
Well,
now that it's been voted down, we know $250 million has been spent. We can't really tell you what it's been spent on, and that's it.
I think because, let's put it this way, there are 49 other states that got a whole lot of money that went through their energy offices. And we got contacted when we first did the report about looking into it. So we're going to recommend to other states, you look into yours.
But it might be too late here in Colorado. Thank you, Amy. Best hair in the political business. Stay tuned and grab your guns.